I know you don't say Maryville, Tennessee, south of Knoxville. I believe you say Maryville, and some people correct me to say Merville. And I don't want to tell anybody how to say that, but this week's recording comes from the kitchen table of my friend Jamie Weiss in Maryville, Tennessee. So I was traveling through there, go to a wedding in Nashville, my first cousin once removed, and wanted to stop by and talk to Jamie and record a little bit. So we had a great chat. Maryville, Maryville. Anyway, coming up.
Once we are adopted, our legal ties to our family are completely severed. Not just to our parents, but to every biological family member, past, present, and future.
What is the sound of one man listening? This is Man Listening, a fresh podcast featuring the stories of strong women who bounce back. Man Listening, because every woman deserves to be heard.
Hi there, I'm Stuart Watson, and welcome to Man Listening. Jamie Weiss and I are part of a group of people, including birth mothers, adopted people, people who are interested in the issue of adoption, who are banding together to try to change one part of the law in one state, and that is to allow people who were adopted to have the exact same rights as people who were foster kids or orphans or any other citizen, and that is to have access to the original documentation of your birth. Just imagine if you didn't know where you were born. You didn't know. You were presented with a piece of paper that said you were born in one state and you were actually born in another. It's very disorienting, and it's very difficult to do family history. So Jamie and I talk about that a good bit, along with other things we share in common. She's really sharp. She's really dialed in on this issue and very articulate about it. Jamie Weiss.
Where were you born?
In Norfolk, Virginia.
How do you know?
Well, the first time I came to know that, I was in college, and later had that confirmed when I found my mother, who I did not know since I was adopted. And she confirmed that. I later also was able to get a copy of my original birth certificate.
Did you always know you were adopted?
I did. I was around 4, 5 years old when my mom's friend, she had a son who was around my age, maybe a year older. I don't know if he was telling me I was adopted or maybe he just was talking to me about adoption. I don't know. Somehow I guess adoption came up. And so that's when I found out, but I don't remember that conversation. So then my parents talked to me, but I don't remember any of that.
But like I had a little book, The Chosen Baby.
I have the same book.
You do have that book?
I do. In fact, I should get it and show it to you. Because not only did I have the book, my mom went through and marked out all of the names on every page and replaced them with my dad's name, my mom's name, and my name.
Interesting.
Throughout the entire book.
And so she would read that book to you?
I guess I don't really remember her reading it to me, but I had this strange thing around the book. I knew that it was like in her closet. It was kind of hidden in there, and I would kind of go and search for it. I think I felt some way that it was going to help me find some answer.
Your other picture books, did your parents tuck them in the closet, or were they?
No.
So this was a different book. This
different.
was like magical powers or something.
The only books that I remember being hidden in the closet were that book and some book about like how bodies change, like puberty, sex kind of book or something or another that was like for kids. That's all I remember being.
So The Chosen Baby and the sex book were the two books that were in the closet.
Yes.
Oh my God.
They were the secret library. But yeah, my mom read to me all the time, but I don't ever remember her reading that book to me.
You have a tattoo on your wrist. What is that?
On both.
Oh.
Yeah.
What is the one on your right wrist?
So this one actually is eternal life.
But it's not just the infinity. It has a.
Yeah, it says life right here.
Oh, it says life.
Yeah, so eternal
and
life.
what does that mean to you?
For me, that's, as a Christian, that I have eternal life through Jesus Christ and salvation.
And
so,
what is the other tattoo?
That is adopted in Hebrew. Can't imagine why I have that.
Did you get them at the same time?
I did.
Yeah. What does your faith, how has your faith been able to help you to sort of navigate this world?
In adoption healing. So there's a mixed bag there. So my faith is strong, and I believe that even in the times where I felt alone, even before I ever knew, when I was in the womb and my mom is stressed because she doesn't know, what she's going to do, how is she going to be able to take care of me, and ultimately deciding she doesn't feel she can, and gives me up for adoption, and then I go to a new family, and I'm stressed as a baby, experiencing that severage from my mother, and being relinquished. That even in all of that, I was never alone. God was with me. He knew. He did not cause that to happen, but he knew what was going to happen, and he was always there with me. On my worst days, on my best days, that he's always with me. Now, when you talk about faith, that also usually brings in the church itself. So as a child, that special, chosen, savioristic narrative of being adopted is being saved from a worse life, and then let's go save all the orphans everywhere around the world, and all of that. That is pretty big in the church realm, and I definitely that plays into those feelings again, where it's being placed upon you how you should feel, and I fully bought into that. Like I said, as a kid, I felt special, I felt chosen, I fully bought into all of it, and I fully bought into the orphan narrative, and let's save orphans around the world. So in the last few years, and I'll say even when I was a younger age, when my husband and I were married, newly married, we talked about having children. We talked about only having one child. I definitely wanted to have a biological child because I didn't know anybody biologically related to me. I definitely wanted to do that. We talked about only having one child, and then if we had any more, we could adopt. Because I wanted to save some other child like I had been saved and give them a better life, right? And we had been very close to moving into that process of let's try to adopt. And one as an international child, another being whatever, if that was here, if that was international, whatever. That didn't happen for multiple reasons. We didn't push forward into that. But now that I start to process everything, and also just start to become aware and learn more, I have come to learn how the orphan narrative is not true. And So then that's hugely pushed in the church, and that makes you question things that you're being taught at church, or programs that they're participating in that come from bigger, outside sources like Southern Baptist Convention, or certain churches and things like that get pushed down into the smaller churches. Or people are kind of just repeating these narratives, it's like a game of telephone almost. It's just like this big organization shares it with the larger churches, and the larger churches have these big programs, and then they're sharing that with these smaller churches, and it just goes on and on and on. You even have Christian concerts where they're pushing the adoption narrative. Anyway, so you start to question that. You start to learn how a lot of orphans really aren't orphans. Over 80% of what we have been taught to believe are orphans in the world actually really are not orphans, and they do have at least one living parent. And even if not that, they have other family or community that can care for them.
And if we spent the money we're spending to ship them overseas,
yeah,
right there where they are, we could have preserved the families and
right,
do
the
all
family
manner of
and
things.
community,
But
and
that
all
doesn't
kinds
give
of
us the same feel good.
Right.
We
So
can't
there's
parade
that.
them around at church.
Right.
Can't take the Vietnamese, Chinese, Russian, African.
Exactly. So you don't get that pat on the back. So I've had to address that within my own self of, saviorism that I had myself of wanting to go save. I mean, I think everybody to some degree want to help children that are in need. I mean, who doesn't want to help a child that's in need? The problem is these kids aren't in need. And why do I feel such this need to save everybody? Myself, but also that's just as a general problem within the church to some degree. There's that I've had to address, and then also, so once I've processed a lot within my own adoption, realizing that it wasn't all just about being special and chosen, that, actually I could have been raised in my biological family. They weren't, the mafia or some horribly damaged people. They were really not that different from my adoptive family. Now, my adoptive parents, when they adopted me, they were at a different point in life than my biological parents were when I was conceived and born.
We have not talked about the whole second part of this, that you and I are working, you're working a lot harder than I am, to get one thing changed in one state. And that is to allow people like you and I, as a matter of course, the same as any other citizen, to have the original documentation of their birth, the original birth certificate, without having to go to, like I did, lawyers and courts and judges and court orders, and paying a bunch of money and taking years to do this, to simply, when you turn 18 years old, let's see the fact of what this piece of paper said that was generated by the state. In recovery, we say we're as sick as our secrets. So what's the big secret,
Right.
So why is that important to Jamie?
It's important to me, for one, on a personal level, is being able to see that document is proof of my existence, that I'm real, that I didn't fall from the sky, I wasn't found in the cabbage patch, as my parents would like to joke about. Wanting to just have this feeling of being real, because there is a common theme of adoptees speaking about just not feeling real. You kind of feel detached and just floating, and like, I don't belong anywhere exactly, right? And so where did I really come from? And when we've been, our story's been either withheld from us or just, unknown to us for whatever reason, that document is our truth. And so for one, it's knowing, who and where I came from, that my existence is real, and having my truth. And then additionally, for myself and just for everyone else that's adopted, is just having that, equal right to our own documents. I just really see it as a human right that, to know who and where you came from, and also to be able to walk into vital statistics or to the courthouse, wherever it might be that you go to apply for your birth certificate, and we should all be able to fill out the same form and pay the same money, $20, $35, $50, whatever it is, to get the copy, and not have to have this separate class of citizens as adopted persons where you have to get a lawyer and you have to pay thousands of dollars and you have to go to court and take all of this time. Like, we should be able to do the same thing, just having those equal rights. So it's just that, again, personal knowledge of your origins and your truth, and also that equal right as everyone else.
And even then, you could pay the thousands of dollars and wait the years.
And
if you don't get the right judge, I could just say, nope.
Yeah, and there's no
recourse.
It's very arbitrary. It's not, there's no set, well, if you have this need for it, that need for it, this need for it. No, it's just arbitrary to whatever that judge is thinking or feeling that day, or towards you, or whatever it might be.
Right. So there's this, that you don't have standing the same as any other adult. That you don't have agency or status, that you have to have someone stand for you. You can't just go as a citizen and ask for this like you would ask for any other birth certificate, death certificate, marriage certificate, any other documentation that's issued by the state. This is just like that little book, The Chosen Baby. They have taken these and put them in the state's secret closet.
Yep.
And in order to get into the secret closet, you got to have somebody with the key. And that means lawyers, courts, lawyers, guns and money, lawyers, courts, judges, the apparatus of the state. And the first thing that you hear from many people is, but what about the mother? She was promised privacy, and this is going to dredge all this up and cause her pain. So what was your experience when you did locate your birth mother?
My birth mom, she had never intended to be a secret from me. In fact, she said that mine was a private adoption, so it was done through a lawyer between essentially my mom and my adoptive parents. And it was all just done through the lawyer. She said that the lawyer told her that they would tell her who I was. I mean, tell me who she was, is what I'm trying to say. When I was older, I don't even know if it was as an adult or at what point, but just when I was older, that she wanted to be known to me. So, I mean, no one ever told her anything different. She didn't ask to be protected. She didn't ask to be anonymous. She fully wanted me to know. And on the other hand, the lawyer, and this is my opinion because I don't know, can't speak to the lawyer, but that he was telling both sides two things. So he's telling her, yes, they'll share that information with me when I'm older. He's telling my adoptive parents that she doesn't want me to know who she is. And that's not the only situation where talking to each, the lawyer told us this, and then she says the lawyer told her that, and it was Like, he's just telling both sides whatever to get the transaction completed. And even in the anonymity side of things, so not only with my birth mom, but with my birth father, he never intended to be anonymous or anything either. My birth mom never intended for me to not know who he was. However, when it came to the adoption itself, she was told by the lawyer to say that she either didn't know who he was or that she wouldn't give his name, just to make the adoption easier. So she said she actually did not like that at all. Like, she wanted to give his name because she knew exactly who he was, and she didn't want to come off as she was sleeping around and didn't know which one of the 20 guys it was or something like that. She knew exactly who it was, but the lawyer told her, don't give a name, either say you refuse to give the name or that you don't know who it is, so that they don't have to go find him and get paperwork signed and have him consent.
Make this as seamless as possible. Don't cause problems.
Right.
Let's get this done.
Right.
Right.
And so that's what happened.
And my experience was that my birth mother loved meeting me. Now,
mine did too.
She was afraid to begin with. Who is this person? Is this person putting me on? Mm-hmm. Do they want something from me? Are they trying to make me look bad? Is this person going to be a problem?
Right.
Once she realized how lovable I was and what a cuddly kind of a person. And we had this wonderful relationship, and I held her hand the week before she died, and I went to her funeral and I helped to scatter her ashes, and it was a very meaningful relationship. But my position, I don't know how you feel, I'm just asking for a piece of paper. Mm-hmm. I do not think that knowing who my biological mother or father is entitles me to a relationship with them, birthday cards, Christmas dinners. No.
Right.
It's just a fact-finding process.
Correct. Finding those facts is for our own knowledge. Like you said, it does not change your ability to have a relationship with them. Doesn't force them to be open to you. It also does not change any, let's say, inheritance.
No.
Or family connections that way, because some people
I can sure show you that.
Afraid of that. Yeah, I mean, not, people just like, oh, this adoptee's going to come back and find us and,
demand money.
Want money or something like that. Once we are adopted, our legal ties to our family are completely severed. Not just to our parents, but to every biological family member, past, present, and future. And that's something I don't think a lot of people realize. Like, when my relationship to my biological family, through no choice of my own, was severed, I'm no longer related to, legally, in the eyes of the law, to a great-great-great-grandfather, any different than I am to a niece or nephew that's born 20 years after I'm adopted, they didn't have a choice in that. I didn't have a choice in that. My siblings, who are all younger than me on each side of the family, they didn't have any choice in that. So I have a sister and 3 brothers. In the eyes of the law, I'm an only child. I have no siblings, and none of us had a choice in any of that.
My little emphasis is something slightly different. As a career investigative journalist, I'm interested in, yes, there are such things as facts, and you can ascertain, just like in science, you can try to figure certain things out. There are many unknowns. And so we are born in a place. Mm-hmm. And on my original birth certificate, it says I was born in Macon, Georgia. On my official birth certificate by my adopted parents, which is filed after the fact, it says I was born in Albany, Georgia. Mm-hmm. Albany. And so I was adopted not by private adoption, not through the church, not through the Little Sisters of the whatever. I was adopted through the state of Georgia Department of Public Welfare. So I was a little white welfare baby. So the state was the actor. I was a ward of the state. I was the child of the state. So for 4 months, state of Georgia was my daddy and my mom, and they put me in this foster home. Okay, the state, governed by the General Assembly, the state assembly made the laws that provided for that birth certificate. And on that birth certificate, they put, ever what you want to call it, a intentionally, factually inaccurate statement that I was born in Albany, Georgia. Let's forget about the mother, father, anything else. They created what can only be described as a legal fiction. So, for purposes of genealogy, family history, simply nailing down what the facts of the situation are, ethnicity, origin story, all of that. So, take church, take spirituality, take trauma, take psychology, all out of it. Simply for purposes of establishing a fact, Stuart Watson was born, baby boy Bowen, April the 8th, 1959, Macon, Georgia, Macon Hospital. Here's who the doctor was. Here's the time he was born. Simply to establish that took me getting a lawyer, going to a judge, opening these records, using these, getting a certified birth certificate, sending it to the Department of Vital Statistics. I had to go before the judge. I had to say that not having that particular piece of paper caused me psychological harm, which I could say, but it's a little bit silly compared to all the other psychological harm. So you're nodding. I mean, like you approach it from a different direction about that this ought to be a basic human right. I approach it from the state ought to tell the truth in its legal documents. Like, unless I'm going into witness protection for some reason, the state, as a matter of course, should not be creating fictional documents.
I think we were put in the baby witness protection program. Did you not know that, Stuart? I was born in Norfolk, Virginia. My birth certificate is from the state of Georgia. It says I was born in Clayton County, Georgia. I wasn't even born in that state, but the laws of Georgia actually say that the adoptive parents can choose, and I don't know in your case, like if the state put that's where you were born before the adoption happened or when that change took place, but the statutes actually say that in Georgia, the adoptive parent can choose any city in Georgia and put that on the birth certificate. And the premise behind all of that is, again, it's a falsehood. And it's a falsehood to, again, play into this as born unto and this kind of pretending state. You don't have to explain why your parents are from, Atlanta, but it says you were born in Savannah or whatever it might be. Like, they can just pick and choose what city they want it to say.
Well, what that also means is your adopted mom and dad can decide for themselves whether they're going to acknowledge that you were adopted or whether they're going to straight up tell everyone that you are their biological child, which they can do. And there are consequences for that. If you live in kind of a fictional denial of something, there's a psychological consequence for that. The truth will set you free. The truth is incredibly liberating because it opens the way to healing. It opens the way to a kind of restorative process. And let's just look at it face on.
If we say, I mean, there's a couple of things here. Like, people will say, oh, you can choose your family, right? That, speaking of, maybe they don't have a great relationship with their family, but they choose their friends to be their quote unquote family, right?
Sure.
And things like that. You know, and also this, you know, well, adoption is beautiful and stuff. Okay, well, so both of these, if you can choose your family, then why is adoption seen as something that is, you know, taboo to talk about or allowed to be these true facts to be realistic, and live in that, so that, like you're saying, we love each other because you care for me, and I love you, not doesn't have to be because we're pretending you're my original parents. And also this, you know, adoption is beautiful. If it's so beautiful, why are we creating falsehoods and lies and secrets and locking documents away? You know, I mean, all of that, like, can't we love each other and be a family without the lies? And that's not very beautiful. And it's only setting up a situation that could very well and likely will at some point explode when someone decides, oh wait, we should address the facts here. And when I say explode, sometimes that might only be within the adoptee dealing with it. Sometimes that's with the adoptive parents too. I mean, there's issues for them in keeping these secrets and even causing and not discussing things, even causing marital issues, you know, or issues with their family that they just want to pretend and not discuss. So, you know, and issues with state documents and adoptees trying to have their truth and the facts of their birth, and then going to get a passport or a driver's license and having issues because we're locked out of having our original documents to prove where we came from. You know, some can get things just fine, and others may have a delayed birth certificate and then enter all kinds of problems.
Everybody says, oh, people are going to use these documents to find, you know, the birth mother and kind of publicly shame her. And you and I both know, in the day and age of spit in the tube for $69.95, and then all of a sudden join Ancestry or 23andMe, then all kinds of things pop up. Mm-hmm. And so who was it who said, one member of our group said, do you want us contacting every one of the cousins and asking them, or do you just want us to go to the birth mother first?
Right. Yeah. If your search for your truth is so you can search for your family and attempt a reunion, going through Ancestry, unless a direct mother-father DNA connection pops up, that's exactly what you're going to have to do is start contacting all these cousins, aunts, uncles, you know, everybody. And so they're all gonna know what's going on. The cat's out of the bag at that point if there had been a secret, right? Because you're starting to figure all that out. Instead of if you just have the direct facts from your birth certificate and say, oh, it's this person, you look up and find that person and contact them directly. I mean, and I just don't even know too, like what were, if it was done in an attempt to protect us, like I don't know myself and most of the adoptees that I know, like what was I being protected from again? Because I mean, knowing where I was born and my parents' names, I mean, even just that basic information helped me tremendously just to know that. It definitely didn't hurt me in any sort of way. And then even in going further and finding them and having a reunion, that didn't hurt me either. They weren't horrible people, and most biological families, parents, weren't either. But you know, I don't know. It's either that. There's some, yeah, definitely some. When I'm, 20, 25, 45, whatever age you are, and you want to know the facts about who and where you came from, you're an adult. You should get to know that. Facts are the facts. Like you said, I mean, the truth will set you free. Truth and transparency are healing.
This exists within a certain time in U.S. history and world history, this particular practice. And it'll be very interesting, I think, 50 years down the road and 100 years down the road, how we look at this in terms of what is a family, in terms of how to avoid or address. Because there will still be children who will be separated because of some circumstance or another.
Sure.
Could be health, could be that the mother dies, could be mother was in a traffic accident or shot, and the child has to be raised by someone who is not the biological mother or father.
I mean, adoption as we know it has only existed for what, 80 years, essentially?
As that legal part.
As this,
I mean, the
right.
practice has gone
Right.
on, but
I'm not,
as a legal...
So I like to talk about adoption as a separate thing from caring for a child.
Right.
So adoption, caring for a child is bringing them into your home or family and caring for them.
Right.
Okay. Then there's adoption, which is that legal process that happens, is how I will define it. That legal severance from the biological family that makes you now legally related to whoever it is that has taken you in and completed this adoption process, and you are to be treated as born unto legally to that person or people. Prior to the last 80 years, when there was a child that needed to be cared for, they were cared for by other family members. They were brought into, and you kind of mentioned this, they were just kind of brought into the fold. Even if the family wasn't capable, then within the community, okay? The Black community is known for being very well at taking care of their own and keeping kids within the community, you know.
Right. The baby scoop era, 1940s to the early 1970s, was almost exclusively a white phenomenon.
Yep.
And that there are many reasons for that, but it had to do with basically supply and demand. That white families were not adopting Black children, and white families had the means, and so that Black children were typically adopted within the community or the family without the legal paperwork.
Right.
And there was also much more of an opportunity for disclosure of, I knew who your actual father was, I know who your mother was. And so there was much more of a pathway informally towards reunion.
Right.
White babies.
Well, and sometimes they weren't even completely separated from their family. They might be cared for
by an aunt,
by Sally down the street,
aunt
even,
or grandmother.
but they still know, like, well, your grandma lives across town and all this. Like, they weren't even. It wasn't this big separation, this severance, and this you know.
The secrecy.
Right. So it wasn't even necessarily that there needed to be a reunion, you know. And in a lot of those cases too, okay, maybe mom was not around for a period of time for whatever reason, or unable to care for the child for a period of time. But let's say Sally down the street helps care for this child for 3 or 4 years, not pretending it's her own child, but caring for the child like her own children. Mom is then in a place where she's then able to parent again for whatever reason, and the child goes back down the street and is raised by mom.
Right.
Not like, oh no, it's mine now, and I'm not giving it back.
There's a pathway.
Yeah, I mean, my parents were definitely that was a fear of theirs. You mentioned, like, the mom would become, you know, able to care for me or something and come take me away. That was a fear that they had. My mom has talked to me about being afraid if I was in the newspaper, you know, being in honor course and my picture's on the front page, or your name's on the honor roll, or whatever it might be, that somehow that would lead them to come find me and search me out, which I was over here hoping that would happen, as my parents are hoping that wouldn't happen. And we weren't even talking about that, you know. And it wasn't that even in that, it was not that I was not happy in my home. It was not that I didn't love my parents or anything like that. But it's just like, who and where did I come from? Where are they at? Surely they are missing me, and are they looking for me? Maybe they'll come find me. Like, I wanted them to come find me because I wanted to have answers. I wonder, I don't know how I felt. I wonder how I would have felt differently and not had so much imaginary narratives in my head about my family. You're trying to make up like what they might look like or what their names might be or what they might do. How much of that would have been quelled by just knowing my story, just even knowing where I was born and what their names were, because instead I had to constantly wonder about that. I mean, I wondered about that a lot. I would write stories, I would make up stories and write them out sometimes. Sometimes they're just in my head. Sometimes I write them out. I didn't share them with anybody. I thought I would get in trouble or upset someone if they knew I was thinking these things and wondering these things. I would throw them away or hide them, you know, fold them up and hide them in places and stuff like that, hoping no one would find them. Like, why couldn't I have just known? I don't know.
If you had to predict right now, do you think we'll be successful next year in opening these original birth certificates? Do you think it's going to take years or decades, or what's your gut telling you?
I feel very optimistic. I feel that so many of the parts and pieces that have come together to create even where we're at and with our committee have really just been quite a blessing and beyond what I feel we could do. Like, I don't know, each and every person on our committee, because you know, we all have this
superpower.
Yeah, just this, I don't know, we all have these unique stories and abilities and skills that come and fit together so perfectly, in my opinion, and Courtney, who's the other like chair of everything. So I feel very optimistic, and I feel that way also because of some of the progress that has been made in the last few years, where records have been opened in a few other states. We've had
Alabama.
Yeah, Alabama, New York and New Jersey were just opened. Tennessee went fully open this year. So we had restrictions in Tennessee, the contact veto and things like that no longer exist. So there are currently 10 states that are fully unrestricted with open access so that adoptees can obtain their original birth certificates. However, there are how many states that even last year, 5, 6, I can't think off the top of my head, that had pushes in this direction that were shut down. Texas is one, didn't make it. Maryland, right? I believe was one.
The fact that 2 of those states touch Georgia, that they're adjacent or contiguous, I think that might be. So
there's like these positives and negatives of some states where it's not that they voted it down in a lot of instances, it's just that it didn't get brought to the floor for a vote. Like, it's not seen as important by non-adoptive persons because they don't get it, right? They don't understand our need for this information. They don't understand the discrimination, how we've been placed as this other class of citizens that aren't allowed to have our own documents. And so they don't see it as important. And so that it just a lot of times doesn't even get brought to the floor for a vote. It's not that people are saying, no, we don't want them to have it, but it's just, we got other things to deal with. So I'm very optimistic, but cautiously, I guess. I hope it doesn't take a long time. There's adoptees that are struggling every single day and we need to make this happen, not only in Georgia, but it needs to happen across the Southeast and across all of the United States. How do you know where to go in life when you don't even know where you came from? It's really hard to know and feel that you have a complete sense of self when you don't.
If we get struck by lightning right now and all that remains is this audio, what is your legacy?
I hope that my legacy would just be for people to understand that adoption is not all that we've been led to believe, that adoptees are struggling and they need help, they need support, they need encouragement, they need people to come around them and love them and give them space to express themselves. And that you can both understand all of the goodness that may have happened in our lives if we were adopted, like if we had a good family or, went on to better things, and also acknowledging the huge, tremendous loss that comes with being relinquished, severed, and adopted. But that we can have both of those, and we can be more whole by having our truth, bringing all of that together, not denying any part of us, whether that be our feelings or whether that be our origins. And that's, I think the quote from the Catholic Mothers for Truth and Transparency, where it says truth and transparency is healing for all, I think that kind of sums it up. Let's truthful about adoption, truthful about the facts of our origins, allowing us to be truthful about our feelings. I think that is the only way for adoptees to have this, better sense of self, better, healthy life and relationships. And so truth and transparency, I hope, is what people will see from anything, I guess, that I speak about and try to work for in adoption.
Jamie, thanks for all that you've done.
You're welcome.
I appreciate it, and thanks for your time.
I appreciate you listening to me.
God bless.
Thank you.
Jamie had a business appointment at 11, and I really appreciate her time that morning, fitting me into her busy schedule. Next week, I stop on the way home in Weaverville, just outside of Asheville. Stopped for lunch and got a white duck taco, and then went out to Weaverville to see a friend of mine out there, and that podcast is next week. We sat out in the park on a beautiful fall day, and we talk about nature and spirituality, and it's really this beautiful, connected conversation. That is next week with my friend Sarah. Hope to see you then.
Man Listening is a production of Unmediated LLC in cooperation with the Queen City Podcast Network and Balto Creative Media. Allison Andrews at Andrews Creative and Rachel Clapp Miller are developmental producers. Sally Higgins at Higgins & Owens tries to keep us legal. Our music is A Day at the Park by the group Pictures of the Floating World. Your announcer is Catherine Smith. That's me. Please go to our Patreon page. You'll find us at patreon.com. Look for Man Listening, one word, no spaces. We hope you'll join us by becoming a member. A small investment can raise up the conversation. If you want exclusive member merch, like a t-shirt, we can arrange that too.
Thank you from the bottom of my heart to anyone and everyone who has supported Man Listening from the very beginning in whatever way you have. Thank you so much.
Don't forget to support us at Patreon. We believe one voice can change the conversation. Click the subscribe button, and next week you'll hear...
being connected to the planet, being connected to plants specifically. So plants have their own consciousness, and they've proved this.
That's next week on Man Listening. Thanks.